So my first experience with breath was about 17 years ago, when I was at the Osho commune in Pune in India. I came there. I was already a massage therapist for quite a few years, since I became a massage therapist when I was 20 years old, and this was my start in working with people, working with human body. And there was a course which was called Hara Massage Training, and I didn't have much money, and I got invited to the course to translate, to be a translator for somebody who spoke Russian and didn't speak English. And in one of the sessions, it was a breath session, so they told us to sit. It was a sitting breath session, and to start to breathe in and out through the mouth, while the other person had their hand on the back, kind of just a touch support. And I had no idea. Okay, well, let's breathe. Let's see what happens. And I started to breathe, and all of a sudden I start to feel all these incredible body sensations that I've never experienced before. And then this touch on my back, and my body starts to move, and I'm charging and charging and charging. And then one of the facilitators came and just pressed into my solar plexus, and that opened up a complete floodgate for me. The tears started to come like I've never cried like this ever before in my life, since maybe when I was a child. I had like some real shedding of tears, but for years I have not experienced anything like that. And I cried and I cried and I cried, and then the session was over, and I had to come right out of it and translate. And I could not put two words together. It completely took me apart, and I had to speak. I managed somehow. Then I left and I went to the pool, and I just stayed in this space for about 3 days. I couldn't complete no mind. It really took me out of my mind to the space of complete expansion and vulnerability and sensitivity. And we went on with the Hara massage training, the abdominal massage, and it went deeper and deeper, because we went deeper into the organs, and it was all connected with breath and also sensitivity. And from this moment on, something inside felt, wow, this is something that I want to work with. I want to continue exploring this. So that was my first experience, and then I came back after the next year to Pune, and I took the breath training which was offered, and that was a 2-month-long training. So we were there from 6 o'clock in the morning until about 10:30 in the night for 2 months, for 8 weeks. And by the time that was finished, I was done. I was fully done. I went to Goa and stayed on an empty beach for another 2 months by myself, to just trying to integrate everything that was happening. And it was quite a beautiful experience. And then I continued to come back more and more to study the work, and to learn more, until about 6 years ago I discovered working with trauma, somatic experiencing. And this for me made a complete sense that bringing people into cathartic space, which the same way that I was taught, breath, we breathe, something happens, we explode, we beat the pillows, we scream, we throw it all out, all great. And then I started to go deeper into understanding of the effect of a very intense emotional release on the nervous system, on the body. And most of the time I just realized that on my own experience that every time I go into a very, very strong emotional release, that after a while I'm just riding this chemical emotional high. So nothing really shifts on a deeper level because I am so involved in this experience that I am not fully present. So it's overwhelming, it's huge, the experience, and it takes over. So most of the time, I found that I'm losing myself in it. It's kind of like reconnecting to the original trauma and reliving it in the same way. But if you connect to original trauma and you relive it without much much awareness, it will keep coming back and back and back. It's like playing the broken record. And usually, what happens in a traumatic experience, because there's so much going on, we get overwhelmed with the experience and we shut down. It's a protective mechanism that starts to kick in our body, that we shut down to protect ourselves from being hurt more than we are already. So this deep realizations start to happen. Okay, we need to slow down all the processes that happen. The breath, the movement, everything that happens needs to be slow enough that the person can stay present to their experience without being overwhelmed. So in this way, we create a container for people to be able to be with whatever is without checking out, without disconnecting. So it's very somatic, it's very body oriented. So when we work with biodynamic breath, it's a technique, a tool that I have created from my different learning of different modalities that I kind of put it together through experimentation with groups of people, which I do full time around the world, and to see what works together and what kind of complements step by step to support people to release the shock which they hold in their system, the nervous system, the muscular system. Because nothing goes without a trace. Any kind of experience that we've been through leaves something behind. So I want to give you a chance to ask whatever questions that come up for you through your learning of breath work and being together for a year, and I'll be happy to answer if I can, of course.
I would just like to jump in right here. You mentioned the shock, the trauma to release. Do you see a difference between a trauma that happens in an instant, like one incident that shocks or traumatizes, versus something that has built up over years, like self-abuse or addiction or just misbehavior, which is actually also kind of a trauma, isn't it? But it's a long stretch trauma.
Yeah.
Is there a difference in the release of these?
There's no difference in release, because when release happens, it affects the body in the same way. The prolonged trauma it's harder to let go. It's lodged deeper in the system. If you are constantly exposed to a traumatic situation over and over and over again, the defense mechanism becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. And also, something that has a very strong effect on someone may not affect someone else, or affect someone else to a different degree of intensity. So another thing is, the sooner after the initial trauma you address it, the easier it is to get rid of the shock that's stuck in the system. And longer it's been in the system, more difficult it is to let go. But not impossible. And I've seen people in one singular session let go of a huge traumatic event. And this is visible through their body movements and you could see the facial expression, the brightness in the eyes after the person comes up from the session, and it's just the whole energetic field is shifted, and you could feel it, like something shifted in the energy of this person.
Will the person stay like this after a while?
Yes, yeah. The result are actually long-lasting or even permanent.
And I want to ask another one. If like you keep bringing the person into the body while you're doing your type of breath work, and I wonder, what do you think about this experience when we see images, when we go to connect to the God or whatever, to the spirit? Do you find it useful, or how is it integrated in your work, or do you use it at home?
In biodynamic breath, we don't pay much attention to esoteric experience, which happens anyway, but we are more centered around staying on the physical realm, staying grounded in the body, staying present with whatever is going on at any given moment. Because having these experiences of visions and past lives, it also can be a way of escaping from the pain that we encounter in the session. Yeah, and that is important. To transcend any pain that we encounter in the session, we need to dive into it, but slowly and gently enough that it doesn't become so huge that we disconnect again. So, of course, breath work is used for exploring alternate states of consciousness. That's what Stan Grof kind of came through with holotropic breath work after his experiments with LSD that were shut down, and later on he moved into the breath to explore the alternate states of consciousness. And biodynamic breath keeps it really in the body. We're more interested with staying with the physical experience because it's the basis of trauma healing. Yeah? It's the basis of trauma healing that you need to stay present to whatever is going on. And when you have the container enough to be present, you can handle anything. And there's no more energy that's being released into the body and not expressed. You're actually expressing whatever is happening. You're not shutting it off. You're not cutting it.
You mean you expressing it during the session or during the whole life?
You start to learn how to express during the session. Yeah? And these are the tools that you can use in daily life. Yeah? It's not only confined to the time in the session. What happens a lot in trauma release is the tremors start to come. The body starts to shake. And this is a release of a nervous system. The nervous system triggers the release of the shock through shaking. So this can be practiced daily. And it goes deeper and deeper and deeper. Yeah.
I have a question. If people are checking out, how do you get them back?
And there are many tools. Yeah, and people check out quite a lot in breath sessions. Yeah, it happens that they start to breathe, and after a little while, they just go into some kind of space where the breath stops there. To them, it feels like they fell asleep, but something really is different going on. So there are many ways to bring the person back. What I like best is to ask them to move their body a bit. Pick up their feet and pedal in the air a bit so they get the breath going again. Because when they're checking out, they're not breathing. To get the breath going, to get it moving, that's one thing. Another thing is body work. You really come and you put your hands on the person and you support them with the body work so the breath comes deeper into the body. Like for example, if somebody is breathing and all of a sudden they're somewhere in the outer space. space. You again come to their personal space. You put your hand on them, and all of a sudden they feel you're present. Again, they take 3 breaths, and then again they check out. It happens often. So you ask them to breathe. You actually communicate with them. You ask them to come back to breathing, and you can support the movement of the chest through the touch. So every time they breathe in, you take away the pressure. Every time they breathe out, you gently press on the chest. It's kind of pumping the air more and more into the lungs until it becomes bigger and bigger. So the air starts to move into the belly, it starts to move into the chest, so there's a wave of breath is moving through the body. Usually people start to breathe, they either breathe into the belly, they're kind of forcing the belly out, and the chest remains completely stationary. Or they breathe into the chest, like even upper part of the chest, and nothing goes below the diaphragm. So our job as a supporting facilitator is to support them till the breath goes in the wave. So it moves in the belly, in the chest, and it comes out again. It's a wave of breath. Another thing that I use quite a lot that I found that works is pressure points on the feet. Yeah. So you come to a person, if you feel that they're checking out, they're kind of spaced out, they're not breathing, you come and you press quite firmly. You go into a pressure point which is connected to kidney 1. It's a first pressure point on the kidney meridian, which is right here at the bottom of the foot. And if you can each try it on yourself right now, it's quite a sensitive point. So if you go in the person's feet with thumbs, really press. I've seen people just go all of a sudden. the breath comes in, and then they keep going, and you actually stay there for a while, pulsating with the pressure. Like every time they breathe out, you go in. Every time they breathe in, you ease the pressure, and then you keep pulsating until the pressure goes. Another pressure point is right here, just below the clavicles. That's also a great way to.
It's the middle of
the middle, yeah.
Yeah.
Clavicle, right in the middle, just below the clavicle.
So not the kidney point, which is actually here.
Yeah. Another couple of points are at the base of the skull, top of the neck. So you go in there, you hold, you support the head, and you go behind and you press, and that also makes people fully inhale.
Where? In the...
Kind of like these
these two.
indentations,
Okay.
these two that also feel sensitive.
Okay.
So basically, you need to wake them up, bring them back from their astral traveling back here. Yeah, you're here. You're in your breath session. After 30 seconds of breathing, I've seen people just go into this.
Is there someone who really feel like, oh, I would love to be there, and not just come back at all? How is the feedback? Is the sound?
Well, then it comes down that you really need to support the person to see what they're escaping. Yeah. What is the need to fly away somewhere? What are they trying to protect? Maybe there's deep pain. Maybe there is not wanting to accept something in their life. And that comes through also dialogue. It's not only through breath session and you have all the insights and it's done. A person comes out, especially if you work individually with people, you want to give them space to talk a little bit about their experience. Especially if you see in somebody and you have an office and then they have to leave after a session and get on their bike and drive. So you really need to make sure that they're grounded, they can go out onto the street and dialogue, to make them talk about their experience, it makes them also realize many things about what just happened. And also keep coming back, connecting it to the physical experience, what they actually experienced in the physical form, in the physical body. Because they could tell you past lives that they've seen and visions and this expansion and that they experienced and they felt God. Yeah, this is all great. But what actually happened in the physical experience for them? Bring it down into the body. People are quick to escape from the body. Because sometimes those that live in pain, that are not fully accepting of their physical body, for whatever reason, they look for ways to escape. They go into some kind of esoteric studies, the past lives, the schizoid characters, the people that are not connected to the physical form.
Talk about belly and chest breathing. What do you see? If there is a pattern of breathing belly or chest, the chest, what do you see that do you connect with a certain behavior or way of living, or how you see it?
For me, when I see the chest is not moving, breath is not moving to the chest when the person is breathing, right away there's an assumption that there is a physical tension that prevents the movement of the breath into the body part. And if you think of physical tension around the chest, our heart is in the chest, so we protect our heart. We built this invisible armoring. So once we start to move, the area starts to open with the breathing, the heart starts to become softer. Now, all these protections keep everyone at bay. I will not let you close. My heart is well protected. The moment we do this exercise in biodynamic breath, when you stand in front of someone and then you slowly start to open your arms, and just the realization that, wow, I've been protecting myself all my life. I've been really holding this tension around my heart. The breath cannot move. The same thing is with the belly. It's a very soft area of our body which have digestive organs, but there's no actual hard shell protecting it, like the brain is protected by skull, chest cavity protects the heart and the lungs, and nothing really protects the belly. So people hold their belly muscles unconsciously tight to protect the vulnerability here. So when the breath starts to move into these areas, or it doesn't move into the area, you can already start to make an assumption. So by observing the body language when the person is breathing in front of you, you can tell so much about the person. Yeah, it's not just observing, it's also feeling. Yeah, we use this word resonance. Yeah, that you tune in. It's like you have a resonating chamber. Yeah, this is a drum, the skin of the drum, and then all of this is resonating chamber. Yeah. Take this and stuff it with rags, it will not have any resonance. So to be ourselves empty when you're next to someone, that your body becomes a resonating chamber for somebody else's experience. So that is for me, it's the best way to base your next move in supporting someone.
How do you make yourself empty?
Through doing your own work. There's no other way.
But if you're not done yet.
You are, to some degree, you are. Yeah, you are here. You've done already quite some work. So a certain space inside is created. And you keep moving until you feel completely empty. Then you're enlightened. And it's no, there's no
Couple of
separation
lifetimes.
between the inner emptiness and the outer emptiness. So it's a continuous journey. And by working with other people, this is our practice to remain empty as much as possible when you work with someone.
But do you prepare yourself just before the session somehow?
I give myself a few minutes before I start to work with somebody. I center, I connect with my own breathing. Daily meditation practice. And I clear myself after a session every time. As soon as the person leaves, I'm in my own space. I again check in with myself. What is the residue that's left after a session? How I'm storing it in my body? How is my own breath? How I'm holding it? Where is my own tension? I shake it off. I put my hands up to my elbow into the cold water. If I have ice, I put some ice and I dip my hands in ice. And that's kind of drains everything from the session.
Can you talk a bit about the roots of biodynamic breathwork?
So, you mean the elements?
Both the elements and its origin, where,
the origin.
from what school it came.
Yeah. So biodynamic breath is a modality that I have created. The roots came with my study of massage therapy and shiatsu. The part that has to do with breath came from Diamond Breath School. It's an Osho-based breath school, which is now located in Italy. And I studied with them for many years, and I work with them. The somatic experiencing part is based on Peter Levine approach to working with trauma. And also another trauma therapist whose name is David Bercelli, who developed trauma release exercises, which is kind of softer bioenergetic exercises to induce tremors in the body, to trigger the system to vibrate, to shake. So I was looking for ways to take people into deeper experience without overwhelming them. So I start to experiment. How can I work with breath through touch, supporting the breath session, seeing what parts of the body are not open when the person is breathing, support them to bring the breath into those parts that are not moving, that are frozen, that obviously holding tension. And for me, it's understanding that any kind of physical tension is connected with emotional tension. That's whatever we store in the physical body as tension has to go to originate in some kind of traumatic experience, which, like I mentioned before, the energy is released into the body, but not expressed. And so we can be in a situation where we are fully charged with fight or flight. We want to defend ourselves or run away, but we have no chance to use this energy. So it's not going back to the origin. It just settles in the tissue. So this realization for me, it started to happen that, wow, what can I do in the breath session to trigger the person to complete the fight or flight response, which has been interrupted. So I started to experiment. What can I do? What elements that work together that kind of create this completion of the interrupted fight or flight? Because from my understanding and the studying with the trauma work, the good thing is that no matter how much the fight or flight has been in the body, no matter how long it's been interrupted, the desire to complete it, it remains in place. And we always look for ways to complete this. So this is good news. It means no matter how long the trauma's been in the body, we're hardwired to complete this experience. So working with groups and individual clients, I kept experimenting, see what works together, what doesn't go together, how I can take it to the next step. And studying also Reichian-based therapies, which is very much body-oriented approach, I realized, okay, we need to go from the top down in the body. Reichian approach has 7 belts of tension, which is actually related to the chakra system, to the 7 chakras. It's the belts of tension that run through our body where these belts of tension prevents the spontaneous release of energy, spontaneous expression. So the first belt of tension is the eyes, the second one is mouth, the jaw, then moving down is the throat, then the shoulders, chest, then diaphragm, belly, and pelvis. We are wired to express our energy, so it's actually the sexual energy that wants to come up. It wants to move up into the heart. So the sex and the heart wants to connect. And another thing is that heart, the energy of the heart wants to move into all directions. It wants to move up, it wants to move down, it wants to move to the sides. And so the heart energy, we are born with instinct to reach out, to connect with the heart, from the heart to others. What happens is that this instinct to reach out gets interrupted. And the belts of tension, this protection mechanism starts to form. So when we work with biodynamic breath, we begin to open up these belts of tension so we can restore the flow of energy up from the heart and also from the sex to the heart. So this is kind of a basis of biodynamic breath. Moving from the top down, so we clear the pathway. And also combining the belts of tension, because usually it happens that if we work with one belt of tension, for example, we work with the throat, and we open up an expression. Person wants to express, but because they have somehow idea that expression is wrong, the belt of tension which is above it unconsciously starts to contract. So we always keep needing to open the belt above the one that we're working with. So the belt above usually contracts to prevent spontaneous release. Does that make sense? So this is pretty much the basis of biodynamic breath. It's rooted in meditation, which is by far the most important component, because what we do with breath is nothing but to prepare the person for the meditation. So the meditation can happen. We need to clear ourselves so we can be silent. The second important component is breathing. Of course, without breath, nothing happens. Then body work, deep and soft movement. So we need to warm up the body for the breath, and we need to do it with awareness. And the TRE, which is trauma release exercises, which trigger the response of the body to tremor, to vibrate. And when we surrender to this vibration, when we surrender to the body, when it starts to naturally shake, then it sets the stage for the shock that is lodged in the system to come out.
You mentioned earlier that a daily practice for the release of the nervous system would be a good thing to do.
Yes.
What's your recommendation for self exercising in that direction to release the system?
The TRE, the trauma release exercises, when you lie down and you start to bring your knees very closely, very slowly together, closer together until you encounter a place where you start to feel vibration in the inner thighs. And you start with the knees fully open, with the soles of the feet are together. And you very slowly start to bring your knees closer together until there's some vibration. So if you stay with this vibration and you allow it to get bigger and bigger, it will get bigger because the muscles get tired from holding your legs in a certain position. It starts to grow. And after a while, this vibration starts to come into your pelvic floor, it starts to come into your lower belly, and then higher and higher until you feel the whole body is fully trembling.
Is this releasing the psoas, for example, also?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely. And psoas is a very emotional muscle. A lot of the times, it's the source of the lower back pain for people. The tight psoas, it pulls the lumbar spine out of alignment, and then pressure on the nerve starts to happen. It's quite an exercise to start to release the tension in the psoas as well. In general, any kind of shaking vibration, it starts to dissolve the density in the tissue. Yeah, you take anything that's dense and hard, and you shake it for long enough, even if it's a brick, it will start to disintegrate. Yeah, so any kind of tension that we hold in the body, from shaking it starts to relax. So the energy can start to flow again. It's life force energy. It's only not flowing, it's trickling through because of the tension that's not allowing it. And with biodynamic work, with biodynamic breath work, we release the tension all the way down to the core. And that's important because many of us store the tension at the very core, very deep in the body. And some people store it more in the periphery, but more childhood trauma, it tends to store the tension at the core.
I think you mentioned in your manual, and you also mentioned before, the exploration, the just trying out, exploring. Did you actually also do self-exploration with yourself, with this kind of, tension belts or body work and these kind of things, or was it more in interaction with clients that you learned?
Everything that we do, I experimented on myself, and I do experiment a lot with other people, and I do things with individuals and with groups, and then I ask for feedback, and then upon that I try to adjust what's needed. But this work is always evolving, and I'm bringing new things to it all the time. Something that I discover, something that I see that's happening in the group in a particular process that made me realize something. Like, let's try another tool. And something that we tried in this past workshop that we had a couple of weeks ago, that is something very beautiful that I kind of took a chance to try, is working with the perineum while people are breathing. Really putting pressure in the perineum while the person is breathing. Like you pulsate with the breath. You go in when they exhale, you come out when they inhale. And again, you go in with pulsating pressure. And that actually created a surge of energy flowing up through the central channel. And that was quite a beautiful experience to see that you hear feedback from people that's never done this before. And this is also kind of a new thing for me to include in the course. I experimented on myself. I lay down and breathe, and I press. Let's see, it feels good. Let's see what. I kind of took a chance. Let's see how they. Because you actually, it could be quite intimate. You know, you have your thumb in somebody's crotch. So, and it turned out to be great. So
you push him on the exhale, is that right?
yeah, and it turned out to be a really beautiful experience. And I got the feedback from people that I was quite blown away. Like, wow, it's a nice opportunity to explore that way. Because we are always thinking that people are not gonna accept this. It's too sexual. It's too something's always, we have some kind of hang-ups around sexuality all the time. But when it's like, wow, it's just the body. It's very natural. It's the energy flow. It's sexuality is a natural energy. It's just because of our conditioning we're so uptight around it. But it's beautiful. So yeah, I do experiment quite a lot, and I bring tools and I experiment on myself first before I bring the tool into the workshop.
For help somebody to open to release, especially when it's full of emotions, like you was mentioning this guy who helped you by pressing on the plexus solar. Is that the main key point, the plexus solar, to help him to?
It's one of the major points that can trigger emotional release.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the other will be?
The other could be in the hara, lower
Okay.
belly.
Okay.
And another place is here. What's the SCM, sternocleidomastoid, is the name of the muscle. It's called the muscle of 1,000 tears. Somebody breathes and they're fully in the session and they feel they're fully charged, but they just can't quite make the sound. The sound is coming up, it's getting stuck in the throat. So I go in and I press quite hard. And the person is bound to make a sound, and with the sound, most of the times, the tears come. And it also helps that you ask them to open their eyes and make eye contact with you, that they feel they're safe. They can allow themselves to express. Because we have this idea that during a traumatic event, we are alone. We are completely alone with our experience. So when something starts to happen for a person, they tapping into some kind of expression, a lot of the times they stop that expression for that fear that they're alone. You are their external resource. You're there to support them to go into this. So they have an understanding, wow, I can touch on this. I'm in a safe space. I'm not alone in this right now. So they can venture out and explore this, allow the release to happen. And another important point is to trigger the emotional release is right here. Also, it needs to be done when the person is holding eye contact with you. Yeah, so they're there, they're looking into your eyes, they feel safe, and you can go quite strongly to these 2 points, which can trigger a lot of tears.
What meridian point is that? What meridian point is that?
This is stomach. But one thing I want to say, if you are triggering something for somebody to express, you need to be able to handle it. So know your own limits. Don't push somebody into the space which you have not gone yourself yet. be prepared. if you trying to support somebody to really touch on their energy of anger or rage, if you were never gone there yourself, you will not be able to understand what this person is touching. Yeah, what are they going through? So it only starts with, you can take somebody as far as you go yourself, as kind of a saying that we all know. But in this kind of work, it's really like that. So really, it's important to keep doing your own work so you are familiar with all of the states that can happen in the session. And each session is different. Sometimes you go into this expansion state of bliss, and sometimes you can encounter this murderous rage. And we're all so conditioned to kind of block this. It's not acceptable to feel angry. Good girls and good boys don't feel angry, and they hide it and they don't express it. But it comes out backwards. Yeah, you either start to trigger others to to act it out for you, or you start to get some kind of horrible disease because you're not expressing it, you're not allowing yourself to feel.
What would you do if the person goes really aggressive?
First of all, you need to make sure that you are safe and the person is safe. Yeah, that they don't hurt themselves and they don't hurt you. When they're getting aggressive, they're getting disconnected with what's happening. So aggression is a disconnect. It's a disconnect. It's acting out on the emotion in an unconscious way. Every aggression is an unconscious behavior. So you support this person to actually come back to feeling what is happening to them on the physical level. Yeah, so how we work with trauma, we support the person to break the vicious circle of physical experience connected to emotional experience. So any kind of emotional experience we have, our body starts to follow instantly in the physical sensations. If we just shift our attention to purely experiencing it on the physical level, we break the vicious circle. We're not caught up in the emotion anymore. And then we start to track the physical sensation. It's called tracking the sensation in this work. So we track the sensation until it changes, and it's bound to change. So if somebody gets really aggressive, you have to first come out with your own power and support this person to come back to just feeling what is happening on the physical level so they can come out of this strong overwhelm and disconnect. And try not to bring a person into this state when they're losing it. Stop a little bit before. Resource them. Yeah, bring them into a place where they feel safe. Aggression only comes because they don't feel safe. They feel like they need to defend themselves on some level. That's why they become aggressive. And it's expression of fear. Aggression is expression of fear. Yeah, so actually support them to realize that what is underneath is fear. And they don't know any other way to express the fear, to let themselves feel the fear, and they're acting out in aggression. And it happens. In groups, it happened before. Yeah, but we had to actually, a couple of people had to restrain somebody. I was flying off the handle. You have to be strong. You have to be very much present and come out with authority. Yeah, this is your space. They're in your space. And the more you're really centered in yourself, that place is always bigger than the space of confusion and aggression. The more you stay in complete clarity, that it doesn't touch you because you have done your own work. You have not done your own work about aggression and fear, and then it will touch you and you will get caught up with this person who's being aggressive and you just haven't you have a real fight. But if you stay in complete clarity with yourself, yeah, this is person's energy. They can go through it, but it doesn't touch you in a way that triggers your own stuff. Then you can bring them out of that. Always invite the person into your space. And they're coming to see you. This is your space. Yeah, you invite them into your space. The same, and I was talking with Nick the other day. You are facilitating a group of people. If you are, the group is in your space. You invited them into your space, so this is up to you to hold that space. This group is made up of individuals, of course. Everybody comes with their whole story. But if you are in a clear space, that space is always bigger than anything else.
I actually wanted to thank you for that, also for saying you don't have to be good or the best in these kind of situations. All you have to do is hold the space. I actually shared that in the group as well because I think it's valuable for everybody. Do you have any other advice for us, in order to hold groups, in order to hold space, in order to be a good facilitator?
Do it as much as possible.
Yeah.
Do it with every opportunity you get. You give a group. Yeah, and it comes with experience. It's not something you just learn by some kind of theory. You learn by doing it and making mistakes and hearing feedback, being open for feedback. From inviting people to the group so they could just give you feedback. And give groups with no matter how many people. It's 50 or 5. Doesn't matter, and it has different learning for you. If it's a small group, you're working with individuals. If it's a large group, it's really a group energy. So you only learn by doing it as much as possible.
I'm interested to know, you mentioned dialoguing before, so how important is the mind in the whole process, or making sense out of the experience, of the whole journey?
If you're working with somebody individually, this person comes to see you because they want to look at some kind of issue. So it's up to you to support them to make that issue clear. Maybe they are already prepared and they know very clearly what issue they want to look at, but sometimes people come just out of curiosity, or they feel that something is going on, but they can't quite understand. So, of course, we use the mind as much as we use the intuition, and we use our sense of observation, how they carry their body, how they store the tension. You can actually see if somebody has shoulders like this, obviously tension is here. You observe how they walk, their body language, how they speak. So all of this we use, and we use our mind, of course.
Yeah, I meant more of the perspective of the breather, like to make sense of their experience and story, or does it happen anyway because it's a process in the body, or
Sometimes they could have a clear understanding of what happened, and they connect it to a particular event from the past. And other times it is purely physical and emotional experience, and understanding of what just happened. I usually don't dig, yeah,
Okay.
because chances are that you're gonna come up with some story just to make them feel better. This is a story that you attach to the experience that may not necessarily has anything to do with it. If people have their own insight about it, it's great. Yeah, then we can talk about it. It's not necessarily has to be that way. Only just be a physical experience, and that's it. And then maybe later, maybe even some days later, or a week later, or some hours later, they all of a sudden get to realize this is what it was connected to. So it has kind of an afterflow effect. But if they don't know in the moment, not important. Stay with your physical experience. Stay with what just happened, how you feel in your body. Keep connecting to this. Out of that, something else may come.
But like if you're experiencing trauma or many traumatic events, there is a mind pattern created as well around that, right?
Absolutely.
So how are you touching that at all, or what is the importance of that in your opinion?
We go through the means of the body.
Mm.
Once we address the tension of the body, mind starts to follow. Yeah. We create an ego as a protective mechanism. So it's really not two things, body and mind. It's body mind. One word. They're not two separate things. So yeah, it's whatever happens in the body, the mind starts to follow. Then we start to question our patterns, our belief system that doesn't support us anymore. That's why psychiatry, just talking about it, working with just the mind, doesn't go very far. We can go just so far that we just kind of get stuck. How much can you talk about an issue? You have complete understanding about it, but nothing really changes in life. Once you bring in the body, then the permanent shifts happen.